a smile that's gonna heal with a love that never ends. His body's in his mother's earth, his spirit's in the sky. Will you come to see me one day? Will you teach me how to fly? Fools crow, fools crow, fools crow, fools crow. I wish that I could feel you. I'd love to kiss your hand, just to sit and listen to a wise and holy man. I bet you tell me.
This is part 2 of Snow Owl, a mentor to his people and to all veterans. And we could start this time with Douglas. He wanted to tell us a little bit more about Ron Flood, aka Snow Owl. And you worked with him for many years at the fire base Ellesmere. And we talked about that, we mentioned that, but I thought it might be interesting for you to give us a little bit of perspective, what that looked like in the beginning and how it turned into a really permanent spot for you all.
Originally, that whole fire base was just on the corner of the VA. And we were all just standing on the corner with signs. The weather started changing, started getting closer to winter, and first thing we did was build like a little lean-to. There was a tree and a telephone pole. We ran a line and we put a tarp over so we could stay out of the weather. And before you know it, we had built a little shack right on the corner of the VA. A lot of this was done late night when the VA would wake up the next morning and there was a little door to the shack. And at one point, we got word they were going to send one of the engineers down and call it that we were shouldn't be safe. Well, when they got down there, we had fire extinguishers set up. We had exit plans. They couldn't do anything.
Wow.
And that was kind of how, the first year that kind of started, we just kept adding to it. At one point, the National Guard gave us a medium GP tent to put beside it. And by that point, we had a porta-john down there. So,
wow.
we were planning on staying for a while. That was for sure, And at that point, Ron was actually living in Pennsylvania. So to get to us every time, he was a little bit over an hour and a half drive to get to us every day, And of course, that was way after Rebecca, his daughter, had born. And I think Ryan was on the way at that point, too. So, it's like, I think I told you before, I was actually Ron's best man when he married Elizabeth. So, I've been around Elizabeth and Ryan and Becca. I call her Rebecca, since they were little tiny children,
Azaban.
Yeah.
That's what her native name was, Azaban.
Oh.
Little raccoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And she could have earned that name for sure.
Mm-hmm.
She was a handful when she was young.
Hey, Doug, didn't I don't mean to interrupt you, but didn't Biden help you when he was a senator there in Delaware?
Yeah. The two people we could count on constantly for Firebase Ellesmere was Senator Biden and Senator Ross. And what was wild about that at the time, if you think about it, Biden was Democrat and Ross was Republican. But they both believed in what we were doing. In fact, Senator Ross at one point came down. We kept telling him, you give them up to a 4 or 5 month thing, for when you're coming. Show up one day and just come when they don't know you're coming. And he did. And that same day, he ended up getting a GAO inspection of the RVA hospital, which got the director actually off.
Sorry, Doug.
No
Hello,
problem.
Faith.
Yep, finally got
Hey.
everything to work.
All right.
Good.
Yeah, we hear you strong now.
Were you cussing the computer too?
Yes, I was.
Well, welcome.
But continue, Doug. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I don't know where I left off. Did you get everything I had said about Senator Ross?
Yeah, yeah. That's really significant that you had that kind of support. And really important. And you were able to, help the veterans that needed to come there to the VA. You had told me about you had so much food, and they would have vouchers that they could go and get meals.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Once we got that, we started realizing there was veterans that at that point, Wilmington, Delaware was the only VA hospital. If you live downstate in Delaware, you got a 2-hour ride to get up. If you had a 6 o'clock appointment or a 7 o'clock appointment, you had to come the night before. And we started realizing we had guys that was coming up and no place to stay. That's when the medium GP tent came in. We had beds in there. We had kerosene heaters to keep them warm. Mm-hmm. So when they come up, if they didn't have any money, there was a pizza place right across the street. And we'd send them over because people had been giving us donations to run the thing because we had to pay for the kerosene. At that point, we had to pay, for anything we were using at that point, the Porta-John. And we'd send them over and they could get a sandwich and a bag of chips and a soda. And at the end of the night, we would go over and whoever we sent over, we'd square the deal. And if he was getting rid, and we usually went over just before closing because he always told us to do that. We got over there. If there was any leftover pizza, he sent it over with us. We also had a bakery right next door to the VA that started giving us day old donuts and stuff. We finally had to stop that because we were getting too much. We couldn't get rid of it. And it was costing us, to get rid of all the junk.
I got a question. Snow said something to me about how you kind of tricked the VA people because they were saying, oh, you can't have it, there has to be a permanent structure. And didn't you build that structure under a tent?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that they had done it. In fact, the weird part, when this was all being done, me and Snow went, I think it was Indiana, to a big vet thing. Because what we were doing in the meantime, me and Snow would take off and go different places for the weekend to try to get other veterans to realize that Firebase Salisbury could be done there. And when we came back, they had the front was up with windows and doors. They even had little flower boxes under the windows. But it was still basically a tent. But they didn't realize we had snuck in plywood, and now the tarp that was there was actually had plywood on the thing. The only thing that was still plastic was the two sides that we had closed in. That we didn't get that solid at that point. But it was one of those things. That's kind of where I was saying about they sent an engineer down to try to shut us down. And one of the guys that made exit thing, they had the signs you see in a place of how to get out of it in case of a fire. We had them up. We had 2 fire extinguishers hanging. And there was nothing they could do because we were basically a building. And at that point, it was kind of, I think we were almost 2 years in at that point, So they were having a hard time. I think it was like the 3rd or 4th year when we decided this is starting to get out of hand. It's starting to look trashy. We would rather get a trailer. And we talked to the VA and they agreed. All the way up till the day we were going to put the trailer in. Now you got a picture. Me and Ron knew we were native, but we weren't doing anything on the Red Road at that point. So the day we told them, look, we're going to take this is going to be the first time we're going to take a break for the weekend. We'll come back Monday. We'll put the trailer in place, and then we'll look neater. We got back Monday. The state police was there. They were talking about arresting us, and they weren't going to let the trailer we had purchased go on the property. Well, next thing we knew, we had town mayor come in, said she would get arrested with us if she had to. In the meantime, we had a lot of press there trying to figure out what was going on. The state police actually walked up to me and Ron and said, "We don't want to do this, but you understand we got to if they make us." And Ron turned right around and said, "Look, this is what we're going to do," because there was about 6 of us standing there. That was part of the fire base. "If you have to arrest us, we will turn around and put our hands behind our back, and we will not give you any problem. This is not your fault. It's the VA's fault at this stage." In the meantime, what we didn't know, one of the state senators had come up on our behalf. We'd never talked, as far as I know, we had never actually physically talked to this man. So he tried to go talk to the VA. They ignored him because they didn't know who he was. And as he was walking away, one of the reporters said, "State Senator, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I'm waiting to see if they arrest these boys. I'm going to Dover and I'll get another 20 foot of right of way so they can do what they got to do."
Oh, wow. Oh, good for him. Yeah.
When Ron walked up to the acting director of the VA at that time, the director said to him, "So what are you going to do?" Ron said, "I already told you what we're going to do. We're going to put the trailer on the property." And Ron looks at him and said, "What are you going to do?" He says, "We're going to let you do it."
Yay.
Oh, good ending.
That was one of those victory things. I ran down. This is kind of sad. I ran down to Tandy Leather, bought a bunch of fake eagle feathers, and we were all flying the fake eagle feathers because at this point, the guy that brought the trailer left. We had to actually manually move one of those portable office trailers onto the property.
Oh, my God. Wow.
But we had enough guys that we literally jumped it up with the curb, got it where we wanted to set, and set it there.
I got a question.
Yeah.
You were talking about you and Ron going to the other states on the weekend and trying to get other ones going. How successful were you at getting more of the fire bases?
We had, in one case, there was a one-day run in Georgia. That was it. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to put the effort in, to be honest with you. Massachusetts, which Ron was from, they ran it for about a week, and they couldn't get enough people involved. The big problem, I think, if you want to know, it was a lot of time trying to get people involved. You know, it was easy enough. They'll say, "Oh, yeah, I'll come." But it got us in trouble sometimes, too, because I was supposed to be the spokesman going to the press. And we had told people, don't talk to the press unless you know what you got to say. We ended up, at one point, we collected over 27,000 signatures at the fire base that we were going to take to D.C. While me and Ron were not at the fire base, somebody made the comment we were going to march them to D.C. By the time it got into the paper and we saw it, we were done. We were like, okay, who's going to do this? 5 of us ended up marching those signatures to D.C.
Wow.
During Hurricane Hugo.
Oh, wow.
So it was Ron, me, and 3 other people. And the guy that actually said it never showed. That was our problem. That's why we tried to keep it safe. We made it as far as College Park, and everything was falling apart. People, you got a picture. You got Vietnam vets in there. Just went through rain, everything else on foot. And what we did was we took 3 cars with us. They put a car at a 5-mile marker, a car at a 10-mile marker, and then the other car come back and bring everybody back. And to do it, that would tell us how we were going. So once we got to the 10-mile marker, we knew we only had 5 miles. We were doing 15 miles a day. But by the time we got to College Park, we decided we were going to get a hotel room. Sleeping on the side of the highway was not really good for us. Everybody was burnt out. I was burnt out. Ron was burnt out. The guy, Earl Williams, literally started talking crazy, and he was going to be our spokesman. So we sent him home. Another one of the guys was acting stupid, so we sent him home, said that we were down to 3 people. I looked at Ron and said, "We're this close to D.C., we're driving the rest of the way. We're done. This should never happen in the first place, but because somebody said it, we had to do it." And that was the kind of same thing Ron would do. Ron had that kind of same vision. If somebody said something, we were going to do it that way. Even if we didn't agree with it, it was already out there and we had to follow through as much as we could. And we got to meet people on the Capitol steps to give the signatures to. And in fact, that was the trip that I found out about the subway in the Capitol. Because they have a private subway, because Senator Biden took us downstairs onto the subway and took us to lunch.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was one of those things.
Faith, did he talk to you about this time period much? Faith?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, I thought it went away again. I remember him telling me about specifically Senator Biden when he was, that stuck in my mind, that he was really pleased with his the help that he gave them. Back when Joe Biden was senator instead of president. And he seemed to have a bit of respect for the man, even if he didn't always agree with him. But it was a hard time. But I think it was a very rewarding time too, wouldn't you say, Doug?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can remember when Joe decided to run for president before he became VP. And Ron called me excited, But like we said, one of the reasons I think he had that respect was when we got out of the PTSD unit, we were still fighting for 100%. And we actually got to sit with Biden and Senator Roth's people to talk to them about what was going on with us, with this fight that we've been fighting for years, And, and we had already seen some people that never went into a VA hospital for PTSD get 100%. And here we were, people that had been locked up. I mean, to give you an idea, and a lot of people don't know this, but in my first year home, I tried to commit suicide. That's the load we were carrying that nobody could understand, and how I did it, the VA gave me the pills. And we lost a lot of veterans that way. Lucky for me, somebody saw what I was doing, called the ambulance, which I refused to go. They had to actually literally arrest me with the state police to take me to have my stomach pumped to send me to Coatesville. That was my first trip in Coatesville. And that was 1972, if I'm not mistaken. 1 year after I got home from Vietnam. So a lot of this was going on that people weren't understanding, because there was no diagnosis for post-traumatic stress disorder at all. That didn't come till a lot later. And it wasn't originally for Vietnam vets. It was for those people that were in the concentration camps, the Jews that have been put in concentration camp. That's how that really started. But once they realize what it is, you have to look at what it says: post-traumatic stress. Traumatic stress after a major traumatic instrument. That's what it is. So you have that, So a lot of us were misdiagnosed in the beginning. We weren't getting the help other than, here's a bunch of pills, go home. And that's how it was. And when the first time I met Ron, he was actually homeless. He was living with a gay couple. I don't know if he told Georgie or Faith about that.
I think he did mention that.
Yeah. And that was before we got in the PTSD unit. Because if you remember, I said in the PTSD unit, we kept saying to each other, going, you look familiar. We had already met because they came down to Delaware to help us with something we were doing. Earl Williams was an advocate. And Earl had brought Ron down with one of the gay couples that he was living with. And Ron was real quiet then. He hardly talked. So that's why I didn't have a lot of interaction. I had more interaction with Earl. But it was at the PTSD unit we figured out who was who and how we knew each other, And it was
I'm sorry.
It was instant kind of a friendship. I don't make friends like that easy, but for some reason, Ron was easy to make a friend with. And I think he made friends with anybody he ever been with. You know, my wife now, the reason I met her was through Ron. But, you know, at that time she was only 21, you know. So, you know, it's one of those things that when I got with the Cherokee people, Ron kept trying to find me holy people. So I could get with my own people. But he kept finding what I call fakes. I talked to him for 10 minutes and go, oh my God, you don't even know what you're talking about. You know, so when I found the Sweat Lodge, that was the first time I found somebody that I really felt knew what the hell they were talking about, you know.
I got a question for you about you know, about the Sundance and Sweat Lodge. I mean, percentage of people that came to the Sundance, especially, of those people, how many you think were Vietnam vets?
You know, that was the one thing I didn't check for the first one. Now, the others that have been, I'd run into a lot of that. But at the first time, I was so trying to understand what I was doing there, you know, understand what was going on.
Right.
I would say that, especially among Native people, we seem to have a higher percentage of veterans than anybody else. Almost every elder I've talked to, my Uncle John, who is my main teacher, he was a 3-tour Vietnam vet. He was a medic. Grandpa Joe Flying By, he was a vet. You know, so all these people are vets. They don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
But you find out as you go, or say, when I met Grandpa Grassroot. Grandpa Grassroot was the ceremonial chief of the Teton Sioux. And he told me a story that when he got back from World War II, he was a drunk. That one time he got so drunk, he passed out in the snowbank. And if it wasn't for the plow guy seeing him, he'd have been killed. Wow. And that's when he got sober and got his butt together. And when he came down here to visit us, we took him to the National Archives so he could look. And we actually found letters he wrote as a child for his grandfather, who was a chief, on the New Deal that was being done at the time. And it was weird because we're in there, and they weren't even in the Lakota box. They were in a Cherokee box that had come up somehow, and we found Cherokee stuff, and I was like, oh. I said, Grandpa, look at this. Is it? And he goes, oh, I wrote that when I was a kid.
Wow.
You know? And he was one of the ones they called the Seven Horsemen that was trying to get land back for the Lakota people.
Hmm.
You know?
I know my uncle, my father's brother, was a World War II vet, and he was a field medic in Hurricane Forest, which was one of the most bloodiest battles, I guess, of World War II. And I didn't know it till after he was gone. He didn't talk about it. My father was in China-Burma theater, and he didn't talk about any of that. And I know it affected him because somebody was interviewing him when there was an article done on me and one of my exes. And you know, my dad broke down crying, and he never expressed any issues that he had. You know, he was in his late 70s then, but he just broke down crying when the interviewer asked about his time in the war. So I get that they don't talk about it, you know.
When I was talking to Deb the other day on the phone, we brought up something to give you an idea of how the PTSD worked. I had a pop-up camper when I took Ron down, his first trip down to get his travel ID. We were camping on Lake Champlain. Well, that first night on Lake Champlain, we're both sound asleep in our beds on each side of the camper. And there was a thunderclap that hit on Lake Champlain that me and Ron both came out of the bed in one move and was standing staring at each other in the middle of the floor trying to figure out what the hell just happened. Because it wasn't just the sound of the thunderclap, it actually rocked the camper. It's almost like we had been hit with a mortar shell. And that showed both of us where we were in our PTSD, because we were still reacting to something that we would have reacted to in the jungle. You know, that, and you're talking at this point, this is 1990. I got back in 1971, and I can't remember the actual date Ron got back, you know, but, you know, all those years later, we still had that same instinct, you know, and when we started getting on the road, the red road, it was, did it take it all away? No, but it made us start understanding something. We started being more than ourselves. It was like the ancestors were talking to us, calling to us. And I believe that truly because of the medicine that I've had, that they'll wake me up at 2 a.m. to talk to me and tell me things that I need to do in my life. And they've been guiding me ever since. They guided me to the road, and they've been guiding me since I've been on the road. And it's something, if I could say anything, I think if Ron was here, he'd say the same thing. We need to get back to the old ways. That's where we need to be. The fact that there was another white buffalo calf born in April 24th, 1924, or 2024, it's like grandfather screaming. Do you hear what I'm trying to tell you? Something's coming. You need to get back to the old ways.
Yeah.
We need to learn the old languages. We need to learn the old medicines, because if this all falls apart, that's all we're going to have, you know, and it ain't going to be what color you are or what nationality you are at that point. We have to go by what Crazy Horse said, that all the colors of all the nations will come together under the sacred tree again and rebuild the hoop. And I believe that. There's something in me that says that we need to listen to the elders, relearn who we are as a people, you know.
And especially now, we have to come together and put a lot of our, you know, I just had a feed on Facebook that was, you know, some guy was ranting about, you know, they, them, and trans people. And, you know, I mean, I just had to take about, you know, 20, 25 minutes and write back to this guy and explain to him. I mean, and that's one of the things I appreciated about Snow. I mean, he always referred to me as she. He knew my parents really well, and they still, of course, referred to me as he. And he didn't, you know, he didn't miss a beat when he'd be having dinner with us, and he'd refer to me to she, and they referred to me as he. It was fun. It was really fun. But he just had a, like you said, a way of bringing everything together and bringing people together. And I don't even think he realized how much he had that power and that gift in him. But one of the things that really made me feel good in my relationship with Snow was, you know, I always respected, you know, we argued about Vietnam because I always said, well, I didn't go, you know, and I wasn't going to go. I was going to go to Canada if my number, I was in the last year that they did the lottery, and I was going to go to Canada if my number had come up. And to me, that, and Ron and I came to that understanding, and I think Doug and Faith would kind of agree with me, that, you know, that fight was a sincere fight, and those people were warriors too, and those people have PTSD in this life, maybe not as extreme as Snow and Doug's, but PTSD nonetheless. And, you know, I mean, I was saying, and as we've talked about before, that things were going to get bad, and, you know, I knew it back then, and, you know, you have to fight the good fight, as they say, and Snow fought that. But he considered me a warrior, and that meant so much to me because I never even thought of myself as a warrior. But he said, no, You're a warrior, Georgie.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And I
that's
was
so
like,
beautiful.
wow. And I
That's
just
really
got,
beautiful.
yeah, I just got goosebumps from it.
Oh,
And that's
I want to bring Faith back into the conversation because she was going to tell us about, powwow, and maybe that time was also a time where Snow Owl was able to bring people together. And what did that look like then, Faith? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the powwow times and what did it look like as far as, people coming together? Did you feel that there was a unity around the event?
There's always a strong unity, especially if there's bad weather or that kind of thing. Everybody really comes together. You can see it more than, just on a regular sunny day. But yeah, it's everybody's always there to help the other person. There's your typical group disgruntlement here and there. You'll never get that many people, I'm going to say under one roof, even though it's a sky usually, without some frictions, because
That's
it's
me.
hundreds of people. So, but he was good at that and helping people get past issues.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. It's not me.
So,
yeah.
no, it's not me either. I don't have that kind of phone. But he was very good at that. People wanted a lot from him. He got dubbed a medicine person, even though he didn't want to be a medicine person. And he got a lot of requests for presiding over ceremony and that kind of thing. And he was very good at it, don't get me wrong, but that wasn't his forte. And that wasn't what he wanted to do on powwow grounds.
Mm-hmm. Georgie, you have a prayer that was written by Snow Owl. Would you want to read that?
Sure. Let me put my spectacles on. All right. So this is Snow Owl, and he called himself the class of 1968. I'm sure that refers to Vietnam. So this was his Veterans Day prayer, November 11th, 1996. And he says, I think now that we have come back, we did not fight the enemy. For ourselves, the enemy was in us. The war is over for us now, but it will always be there, haunting us for the rest of our days, as I am sure the memories will be fighting with the guilt for what I guess is the possession of what is left of our souls. Ooh. There have been times since I have felt like a child, born to those two fathers, but be that as it may seem, those of us who did make it back have an obligation to those who didn't, to build again and to teach to others what we know, and to try with what's left of our lives to find a goodness and a meaning with this life.
Yeah.
And he did. He did a lot for a lot of people, sometimes to his own detriment.
Faith, didn't he also have a lot of people come live with him when they were destitute?
Yeah. Yep, that's what I mean. He did a lot for a lot of people. That house was a revolving door of people coming to stay when they had no money.
And stealing from him.
And stealing from him, and yes. But he never turned away the next person. you know, and that's,
And he didn't kick them out.
no.
Georgie might know this too. If you think about it, a lot of times elders like that have that kind of a thing. Grandpa Fullcrow, for example, he died destitute.
Yep.
They stole from him, and this was a man that could heal. This was a man that was a medicine man. And in a sense, even though Ron didn't like that thing, that's usually how the medicine comes. It's the people don't want it.
Yeah.
If you want the medicine, then you don't deserve the medicine.
Oh, no, and you don't treat it properly.
Grandpa Fullcrow said that about that. Let me be a hollow bone so the spirits can work through me.
Yeah. I think that's in a song, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what he told the guy that was writing his memoir.
Yeah.
And it always made sense to me because those that have medicine sometimes don't want it. They'll run from it. They'll do everything they can not to have it because it's a scary proposition to think that you've got to be this certain way, you know. And I've seen it in a lot of people, like Georgie was talking about Grandpa Wamedy Gillespie, which is still running. I met his father. You know, I've met a lot of these people, and you realize they don't brag about anything. If you find a holy man bragging, get away from him.
Yep.
Because he's not a holy man.
We're going to have to close up in another 2 minutes. I know this is too short. We just get going. You know, it's really an honor to talk to you all about Snow Owl. I really appreciate this. But if you have a closing comment, Georgie?
Nothing comes to mind right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
But
yeah.
The one thing I'd like to say real quick, Ron got me a chance to meet Homer. And that was a real chief. If I could say anything to your people, that's the kind of chief you want. He cared about his people before his own self. The same as Ron. Ron cared about his people before Ron. And that's the real meat of being a chief.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you all so much for talking with us here on radio, and
thank you for doing this.
Yes,
we're going to have to come back. Maybe after the holidays, we can all come back together.
That sounds like a plan.
Okay, we'll be in touch for sure. And thank you so much for talking to me on the phone. Mwah. Love you all.
Love you.
Thank
Right.
you, everyone.
Sometimes I feel
Bye now.
Bye.
so all alone. Millions of people, all just flesh and bone. Misled by talking heads on golden thrones, hiding behind stained glass while they're throwing stones. I'm trying to hold on to love. I'm trying to hold on to love. You want your freedoms, but you won't allow me mine. You use your beliefs as if the truth's a crime. Always running your mouth before you use your mind, hiding the truth so you can't see the signs. Sometimes I feel